Hello, Jeremiah or Gravity Force. This is iManny.com or Emmanuel. I saw your video called Black Atheist, in which you said that there was no evidence for the existence of any God, which is a statement I would disagree with. I mean, as a black theist, I believe there are good arguments for the existence of a God. And I don't mean the Christian God when I speak of this. I mean,
Okay, two things. First of all, I'm not trying to bash you or anything, but you told me that you present me with uh, evidence that God exists, but the cosmological argument is not new at all, and I myself has heard it. I have heard it dozens of times. It's not evidence. You're not presenting me with any evidence. The cosmological argument essentially turns God into the God of the gaps. And what I mean by that is when we have a scientific phenomena, say for example, and if scientists understand almost the entire phenomena and there may be one tiny part that they don't yet understand, and what a theist will come along and do is say, well, the reason that you don't understand it is because God did it, and they'll try to assert this as evidence that their God exists. And of course, when scientists do find out how this part of the phenomena is happening, the theist quickly retreats. So it's not it's not really evidence for a god. It's just kind of a way to it's kind of a way to assert that your god is doing things that you have no way of knowing that he's doing. But I think theists like to take up. I think theists often like to take up science whenever science doesn't fully understand something, and treat science as if it should know everything at all times. And just because it doesn't, then that means that there must be some God controlling everything, which is simply not true. The second thing I wanted to mention is that you don't define specifically what God you believe in. And I just wanted to let you know that this makes it a little bit harder for me to refute your arguments because I'm not quite sure who you're trying to argue for in the first place. But nonetheless, I would try my best to refute this argument, and I'll just kind of make vague guesses as to what your thoughts would be. Um, so if they're incorrect, please correct them in another video response, and I'll be happy to check that one out too.
a God at all. All right. One of these arguments would be the cosmological argument, which is a popular argument, and I'm sure it will contain things that you understand very well. It states simply that everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence.
Okay, right off the bat, I planned on sitting through this a little bit more, but since I have such a horrible memory and I'm not really good at doing these things on the go, I think that it would be better if I just mention this right away. You admit right here to the fact that everything needs an effect, or everything needs a cause, or every effect needs a cause. And I've watched this video already, and what you're essentially alluding to is that the universe needs a cause, or in other words, it needs a God to set itself in motion. The problem with this is that if we assume the universe needs a cause, then we would also need to assume that God needs a cause. And if we assume that God needs a cause, we would have to assume that that cause needs a cause. And so on and so on and so on and backwards until it gets to an infinite amount of creators.
Everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence, because nothing comes out of nothing, by nothing, for no reason. I don't think I need any. I don't think I need to defend that premise because it seems pretty obvious.
Um, and another thing, alternatively, even if we do assume that God doesn't need a creator, well, I would find this extremely biased to assert that God doesn't need any kind of cause, and yet the universe does. If you're willing to assume that God doesn't need a cause, why aren't you willing to assume that the universe doesn't need a cause either?
And secondly, the universe, and I mean, when I say universe, I mean all of matter, time, and space, came into existence at a certain point in the finite past. Uh, we've got good reason to believe this because of scientific breakthroughs in Big Bang cosmology, and also for philosophical reasons because we know that an actual infinite cannot exist. And if the universe is indeed, you know, timeless, then that will mean that there would be an infinite past but we know that that's impossible because it will lead to self-contradiction.
Again, you just summed it up for me. Essentially, my argument to refute your argument would essentially be your argument straight back to you. If you're willing to assume that the universe needs a cause, then you would have to be willing to assume that God also needs a cause, and it would go back in an infinite amount of creators, which would be impossible. So, in terms of the cosmological argument, I would say it really doesn't do anything to prove any God. It essentially just destroys your argument as soon as you start it. I just think it's a really horrible argument. Okay, so essentially, to sum everything up, your argument is that you think that there is a God because the universe is finite, and in order for the universe to spring into existence, it would need a cause, and that cause it would be God in your case. And my simple response to sum things up would be that first of all, if you're going to assume that the universe needs a cause, you would also need to be fair to say that God needs a cause. If you're going to say that God needs a cause, then that would go back an infinite amount of times of creators, which wouldn't be possible and would contradict your own logic in this argument. Secondly, if you are willing and you're unable to budge and you think that God doesn't need a cause, then I think that you would be biased to assume that the universe doesn't need a cause. And honestly, I think that at that point you're just making up your own logic to work for your beliefs.